about an individual who's had many relationships in life. They have a landlord, or they have a homeowners association, they have a job, they took the bus to work, or they have an internet access provider who allow them to connect to the internet. All of those people, in theory, are all some very indirect contributor to the activities of this individual, but we don't hold them responsible. So we make a distinction in the law between what we call but-for causation, could never have happened without this person doing what they did, and what we call proximate causation, the people who actually are close enough to the outcome that they could have changed the outcome. And it's that last piece, the idea that social media services are the proximate cause of a distant terrorist attack, just doesn't really pass the sanity check. We look at it and we say, that's too far, that doesn't make sense. And a number of the related cases to the ones that are going to the Supreme Court have failed for that very reason. The court said we cannot hold social media services as the cause of these unfortunate events.
So is the Supreme Court going to decide that question?
I don't think they're likely to address the causation piece, but it's impossible to ignore. It's the same instinct that you had when you asked the question. The Supreme Court justices are going to look at this case and say, wait, why are they the defendant? Why are we talking about the social media services when there's all these other people who are equally situated and no more responsible? However, the legal question in front of the court doesn't reach that causation question. So they may not talk about it. They may not even feel like they have the authority to do so.
Is it happenstance that both these involve terrorist attacks on foreign soil?
No, I don't think it's happenstance because, in fact, many of the cases that have been brought in this genre, and there are about 20 of them that have been filed across the country, have involved foreign terrorist activity. Some of them have involved domestic activity. Ultimately, I don't think that it really matters from a legal standpoint. There's so many legal reasons why the services should be liable regardless of where the terrorist activity took place.
So these cases are the first test of Section 230 at the Supreme Court. What does it tell you that the Supreme Court agreed to hear them when, like so many other cases this term, it didn't have to, meaning there was no circuit split that it had to resolve?
Yeah, so one of the most common reasons the Supreme Court takes a case is because of circuit splits, where two federal courts are in disagreement with each other and they need the Supreme Court to weigh in and resolve the dispute. The problem in this particular case is that the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals opinion had its own intrinsic split. There were three judges on the panel, and they wrote three different opinions that were wildly different from each other. They were not in sync with each other. So though there wasn't a circuit split, there was an intra-panel split. Now, normally those get resolved by what's called an en banc procedure. The Federal Appeals Court can say, we need to have more judges listen to this case so that we can figure out how to come up with a more harmonized resolution. The Ninth Circuit didn't do that. So because the Ninth Circuit opinion was so messy and the Ninth Circuit didn't clean it up, it created the possibility for the Supreme Court to say, there's a mess here that we need to resolve. Two of the opinions also basically said, we think Section 230 is a problem, and so it created a flag for the Supreme Court to pay attention. There's a statutory problem here that needs attention. Maybe you ought to take a look. So it was a combination of the messy opinion plus what the judges said that I think attracted the Supreme Court interest.
Justice Clarence Thomas had already expressed interest and indicated that he's willing to change the law if Congress isn't.
Well, we have to assume that Justice Thomas was in favor of hearing this case because he's basically begged plaintiffs to bring Section 230 cases to him so he can find a way to try and eviscerate it. So we know that Justice Thomas is already coming in as an extreme Section 230 skeptic. He's literally told us when nobody asked him to.
Google's chief executive officer told lawmakers last year that revoking Section 230 would mean that platforms would either overfilter content or not be able to filter content at all. Do you agree with that?
I do, and it's a very well-known phenomenon with online content. It's something that I call the moderator's dilemma. The idea is that if you're liable for trying and failing, then either you don't try at all so that you can't fail, so you just let everything go through, therefore you haven't intervened at all, or you over-respond and make sure you don't fail, which is impossible, but it leads to lots of collateral damage as well. There's, of course, the third option, which Google isn't likely to do, but many other services will, which is to exit the industry and say that it's not profitable to do nothing or to be perfect, and therefore we have to simply find another line of business.
And Eric, the cases involving Texas's social media law and Florida's social media law, where there's a split in the circuits involving similar laws, do you think the court will take that case?
I do think they're going to take the case, and the reason why in part is because of a opinion that came out of the Texas law on the Supreme Court shadow docket, where 3 judges led by Justice Alito said that they think that these cases should be granted certiorari. You only need 4 votes, so if any one of the other 6 think that they should take this case, then the votes are there. So I'm highly confident that the Supreme Court's going to take the case, and when they do, we have another battle royale over the future of the internet. Not only are they going to wrestle with the questions in the Section 230 context, but weigh in further on the ability of internet services to moderate content from users. So they're going to be having to answer this question, and we don't know what they're going to answer, and their decisions are likely to shape the future of the internet. So 2023 is going to be a very scary time for the future of the internet, because the Supreme Court's going to decide it, and we don't know what they're going to say.
Finally, Section 230, do you think it's something that Congress should take up and work on, or do you think it should just be left alone?
We benefit every day, hour by hour, often minute by minute, from Section 230. There are times that we're talking to each other online are some of the most important and common moments that we have using the internet. So even small changes to Section 230